What's up, guys? I am going to do something different today because I just saw a really great movie called Christspiracy in theaters and it blew my mind. And I actually made a video a long time ago on the intersectionality between Christianity and veganism. And even though I spent almost 3 months researching it, this movie still blew my mind because of the unforgiving truths and just hidden secrets that have been kept from people for thousands of years. I also have my sister here.
Hey guys, it's Sia. Many of you may know me as a fashion influencer on TikTok and Instagram.
So we saw the movie yesterday. What did you think? Because I know you went to a Christian school your whole life, unlike me.
You know, going to a Christian school and learning so much about Christianity throughout years and years and years, taking and studying the Bible, watching this documentary changed my perspective, like in amounts that I didn't actually think. Like when I was watching the documentary itself, like I wasn't even believing what I was hearing half the time, because everything that I've been taught in school for years about Jesus and about his teaching, about the Bible, and even a story about the den of thieves, which is like a big concept that they talk about in this documentary.
By the way, guys, there's spoilers alert. Like we're getting into spoiler territory right now. So if you guys haven't seen the movie and you want to see it and you don't want the mysteries and suspense spoiled, go watch it. Pause the video right now, go watch it, and then come back. You have been warned. Okay, all right. Now that you've seen the movie, which you probably haven't, we're going to talk about it.
It's less about like actually covering those truths itself. It's more like people don't know. I've had pastors that are vegan before. I've had so many other pastors that are vegetarian, because the school that I grew up in was a Seventh Day Adventist school, and many of them are vegetarian because they believe in the health components of being vegetarian. But I don't think we've never really talked about animal sacrifice, and that's such an insane topic.
Den of Thieves. That was actually probably like my favorite part, and I think the way they built it up in the movie was insane, because you would be surprised on what was really going on in there. And people, I think a lot of times in a lot of religions, they justify killing animals because it's seen as like a sacrifice to God. And what they showed about the Den of Thieves is like absolutely crazy.
And one thing in the documentary, I remember that me and my SDA friend looked at each other and were like, holy shit. Somewhere along the line in the beginning of the documentary, they said, if you disrespect the creature, you disrespect the creator. You disrespect the creature, you disrespect the creator. And they kept enforcing the question, like, what would Jesus do? How would he kill someone that's begging for their life? How would he kill someone?
How would you spiritually kill an animal in a way God's happy with it?
I even imagine to ask myself, even as someone who grew up as like a vegetarian and vegan all throughout my Christian education, that is not a question that I have ever asked myself. And I don't think any of my vegetarian pastors or my vegan pastors have even asked themselves that. And that's coming from someone who's grown up in an SDA community. And the fact that we're not even asking these questions really, really shows you how
ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
When they would bring in the documentary, like, what would Jesus do in a situation where he had to kill an animal? Would he kill the animal? A lot of the people that were like hardcore Christians, they were feeling super uncomfortable with that question. Like, oh, he wouldn't kill the animal. He would, he would eat the meat, but he wouldn't. It was as if like he would just eat the meat as if it magically appears there, but he wouldn't like kill an animal if he had to kill an animal. He would show mercy on it. So it's like a lot of these people knew that Jesus probably wouldn't do something like that. And I think it was interesting how like they would scour the Bible for certain what do you call it, justifications, like the fish story, right? Or the Dominion thing, right? So like, for context, the fish story, the movie basically shows that never happened. Like it was basically rewritten in the Bible.
I wasn't even believing it myself until I finished it. I was like, holy shit.
So it's crazy, because I think most people know that the Bible was re-edited, and the original word of God was very, very different than the Bible that a lot of people know today. And some people, will just say, no, we gotta have faith in this Bible, not that Bible. But it's like I'm not a Christian. I don't like believe in it, but I'm just saying, like, as someone that's on the outside, like, wouldn't you rather look at the original OG literature and not look at what
all
the kings had mistranslated? And they showed that in the movie how it got mistranslated. It's pretty interesting. But
the difference between the English text, like the New English text, and the Hebrew text were like
the entire definition of dominion.
And the thieves.
Yeah, so dominion, people will argue, I hear this all the time, like, oh, dominion means we have complete control over them, we enslave them, we
That's
can
like
do
us
whatever
being
we
a
want.
god. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
We're supposed to serve God's kingdom,
Exactly.
and yet he's making us gods to them. Like, it doesn't make it.
And I've never even questioned that as someone who's, again, grown up in so long inside of a Christian.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like people mistranslate all these words to like whatever fits their criteria, whatever fits their tradition, but they don't look at like what the word dominion meant at that time. It meant that you have responsibility over all the creatures. So when God gave dominion over the earth, he wasn't saying you have the right to kill and destroy the earth. He was saying you have a responsibility to guide everyone and take care of everyone, because if you're not going to, then obviously you're destroying God's creations, you're disrespecting God's creation.
Which
So
means you're disrespecting the creator.
the documentary does like a really good job at walking you through step by step, because we could tell you what the documentary is saying, but you might not even believe it. You might not even like want to like actualize that that's a reality, because majority of Christians are consuming flesh like it's whatever, it's normalized. But I think the way the documentary walks the viewer through every step of the journey and goes to like the right authorities for every word, every translation, it's pretty insane.
And the connections that they make to the older world, to now, the Den of Thieves, they also connect a bunch of different other religions that enforce the same philosophy of like non-violence.
Yeah.
It's not just Christianity that they're trying to expose truths from, it's Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam.
So basically like the Den of Thieves for context, right? So thieves, it's like in Hebrew or Latin, it translates to like violent murder.
Translates to someone who was like violent.
It's a violent or like a murderous one or something like that. I forgot what they said. I got to rewatch the documentary. But basically the Den of Thieves was a place where they sacrificed animals for God. And this is spoiler alert, but in the movie, they kind of show that Jesus was not happy with the Den of Thieves.
And he was also called a terrorist.
Yeah, he was called a terrorist. And this happened all 3 days before his crucifixion. So Jesus Christ apparently was not happy with the Den of Thieves. He would go in there, close the whole circus down, say, you guys should not be sacrificing animals. This is not how you treat the animals. So he was against the whole thing. He was like, no, we should not be sacrificing animals at all. But they were just addicted. They wanted to eat meat. They were consuming it, and they crucified Jesus.
People basically confuse the Den of Thieves with
Finances and money.
It's because they were making money off the animals, but they were just focusing on that part. They weren't focusing on the fact that Jesus stopped it, not because of the money aspect, because of the fact that they were killing these animals. That's what the Thieves was referring to. They show the paintings of like how Jesus was like literally fighting for these cows and goats and lambs to not be slaughtered. But the interesting thing is how the documentary related this symbolic image of the Den of Thieves, where Jesus literally walks into a house of slaughter and shuts everything down, or tries to shut everything down, and then he gets crucified for it. Literally, they show the exact same thing happening in India, where people are going into, what was it? Like
it was Nepal, actually.
In Nepal?
I don't know if it was Nepal or India, but it was an illegal sacrifice of hundreds of cattle.
Yeah.
And a bunch of animal activists tried to shut it down, and they weren't supposed to be doing it. And I remember one of the guys, he justified it by saying, well, in America, they kill billions of turkeys for Thanksgiving. This is just our tradition as a Hindu. Someone who's grown up in the Mandar too.
Yeah, it was interesting because it's such an odd justification for them to make, especially when like in Hinduism, it's like written all over the scriptures that cows are like mothers, like they treat them as like sacred animals. And it's just so interesting to see how like they kind of everyone just kind of hides it. Like they know what's happening to the cow after it's done producing milk. They're sending it, they literally get slaughtered. But they try to hide that as much as possible because they just don't want to think about it. They don't want to make the connection. And the money is coming in because they're smuggling in all these cows to go get slaughtered.
Hindus also talk about when it comes to India in general. Like India is the third biggest producer of gold.
Yeah, I think a third or second. I thought it was second largest beef exporter.
And it really makes you question, like, what do they actually care about? The religion and the philosophies that they enforce and they create so much of their country and their laws off of, or do they care about the money?
Because so many of India's
so it's
ideals are not
basically another Den of Thieves, right?
Another Den of Thieves that's happening today.
It's literally just they're finding a way to turn animals into money, and they don't want the public to have an uproar and be like, oh, why are you killing, cows? So they're literally just putting it under the rug. They're hiding it. And the same thing in America, slaughterhouses, right? Why is it so private? Why can't you have cameras in there? Why do we have to censor? If it's food and it's natural and it's okay to do it, we should be okay to see it. But it's not okay because they know if too many people saw what happened in the slaughterhouse, everyone's going to be vegan.
So on top of that, speaking about the law, so many animal activist lawyers and animal activists, people in general that come into slaughterhouses and save ducks and save so many different types of animals, they're on probation, they're going to jail, they're getting lawsuits against them, they're being called terrorists by the government. Do you know what they also called Jesus? A terrorist.
Yep.
And not to mention, again, the death of thieves happening today as well. It's like it's never really stopped. So at one point, you got to ask yourself,
if you're a real Christian, what would Jesus do? What would Krishna do? That's the question people need to ask themselves, because it's insane how far apart the devotees of these religions, even in some Buddhist religions, they were showing the same thing, like how far apart they are from the actual original person that created the religion and what he was going to be doing in these situations. Again, like, I'm not religious, but if someone is religious themselves and they truly believe in it, you might want to ask yourself, like, has your religion been corrupted by any means? Like, are you open to the idea that you might be doing the opposite of what the Buddha, what Krishna, what Jesus, what these gods had actually intended? Because there is always that possibility of a mistranslation.
Very big possibility, because there are a bunch of mistranslations that people already talk about today. So what makes you think there can't be?
Yeah. And I think looking at it, like, kind of stepping away from like the religious aspect, as me, it's like more like science-based. I kind of see like if God really wanted you to consume animals, he wouldn't cause you to get heart diseases, osteoporosis, diabetes, all these cancerous problems. I think it's like 75% of all the infectious diseases come from animals.
Not to mention the number one killer on earth, the number one killer in America is heart disease.
Yeah, so literally it's killing you versus plants, like plant-based foods, it's actually healing you. So it's like, what do you think God intended? Like, just looking at it from the big picture, like, forget the religion, just look at the actual big picture. What do you think is the natural cycle? Like, what do you think humans are designed to eat? And if it was good for you, why do you have to cook it? Like, why can't you just eat it raw like a real omnivore?
If it was good for us,
and we'd be able to digest it without dying, we'd be getting no heart disease, and meat would be a very healthy substance in the first place. If it's killing us, why would God intend us to eat that? And that's something that people are so misinformed with in general. They just think it's good for them. And then on top of that, you look into the religion. Hinduism teaches this, Buddhism teaches this. When you look in the book of Genesis, God talks about seeds and herbs. All of this was made for us to consume. You look at the Garden of
Eden. What are they eating? Lions? Dogs?
And I forgot what emperor was, like a Roman emperor that completely like destroyed like all like the basically like plant eating stuff in the Bible. He was like, what was his name? There's some Roman guy, I forget his name. I gotta watch the documentary again. But if you do watch it, there's a part in the documentary where they talk about how there's like some Roman emperor or king. He was a hardcore meat eater. Like, he hated vegetarians to the point he was actually killing anyone that refused to eat the meat. He was literally killing off people that refused to eat meat.
Yeah.
He re-edited the Bible, so it's like, no. He let us eat meat. He let us do this, blah, blah, blah. It was just insane. They literally used violence to destroy anyone that was going against their tradition of eating meat. And it just got passed down centuries and by centuries. And
definitely
relates to people today. Like how you said, it gets passed down centuries by centuries. People only want to acknowledge the mistranslations that fit their agenda and in their lives, like what actually helps them, what makes them more comfortable. But a lot of people also, it's natural for them to not be as open to ideas that might be, again, with their cognitive dissonance. Like, I don't want to open my perspective to this mistranslation.
I think that's the thing. Like, people are too scared to, I guess, I don't want to say admit, but to kind of come to the realization that your whole life could have been just based off of a mistranslation. As stupid as that sounds.
Ridiculous and so stupid.
You have to be. I feel like anyone that's intelligent enough would be open to that possibility. Because if you're stubbornly gonna cling on to what you've been told your whole life, you're not really following, like, I guess, true spirituality in that sense. You have to be open to the possibility of what is the right thing to do. What would Jesus do?
It's more foolish to keep living like a fool. Like,
you basically rather immerse in the truth in your life instead of keep immersing into something that's more comfortable, because it makes you more comfortable, but you rather not immerse in that truth simply because of the propaganda and the agenda that you want to push out into your life. I think it's more foolish and unintelligent to keep living in that reality when you don't open your mind, whereas living in a reality that may sound crazy, of course, but at least it makes more sense.
That's actually a really good point. That's a good point. And it's basically comes down like to the Matrix, like I always talk about. Like it's basically like people will live in a lie and not even realize that's a lie just because they're so comfortable in it, and everyone else around them isn't doing it.
And I think everyone's a victim to this too. It's
Yeah.
not just
Everyone is living in a matrix of some degree. Even I am to some degree. Like there's delusions everywhere. There's lies everywhere, and it's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault. But it's like, if you can break out of that reality, if you can break out of that programming, I think it's like pretty important. Let us know what you thought about Christspiracy. I definitely think this movie is going to change a lot of perspectives, especially given that there's so many people that I think consume meat because of religion. Because some people will say they consume meat because of, you know, the environment, or they consume meat because but I think a lot of people, the main argument of why people consume meat is because they think it's ethical to do so because God said so. A lot of people that's what they use their morality to base their entire life off of. But this movie proves otherwise in a very, very intelligent way. So definitely go watch it and show someone maybe that might want to watch it.
I mean, you don't have to be Christian. You could be Hindu, or like he talked about all.
Yeah, it does a good job at like going into like some of the major religions, and then kind of having like this overarching idea that all the religions are kind of striving to get toward. And I think each religion could probably have its own documentary.
And it really connects all of them, like the basics, the ethics, the moral that each religion is trying to enforce to be a better person. It literally ties all of them together. And the way it does is pretty crazy, pretty insane, pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
So I highly suggest, no matter what you are, I'm growing up as an atheist, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jew, this documentary is definitely going to change your perspective in a lot of ways. And I highly suggest you watch it. It is so, honestly, it made me, in the beginning of the documentary, I thought I was going to move farther away from God, but I honestly feel way more closer to like the truth, way more closer to like spirituality and everything. And I honestly thought it was going to be the opposite, but by the end of the documentary, it made me want to do a lot more than a lot less, which is how I usually feel when you watch documentaries all the time where people are just dying and animals are dying and this and that. This is definitely a very inspiring documentary, and I highly suggest that you guys go watch it.
Totally agreed. I think it's one of my favorite documentaries.
Oh yeah.
So definitely go check it out and let us know your thoughts of the film in the comments down below. And I will see you guys next time. Peace begins on your dinner plate.